It's an exclusive club like no other, a fortress of power nestled in the Swiss Alps. For over 50 years, this World Economic Forum has quietly shaped the future of the world.
The World Economic Forum is considered to have significant influence. At the same time, it attracts considerable criticism.
A former judge and member of the European Parliament describes the WEF as the world's most dangerous international association.
At the center of it all is one man, Klaus Schwab. It's the year of 1938. In Germany, the air is thick with both hope and fear as the country undergoes a rapid transformation under Adolf Hitler's regime. 5 years into Hitler's rule, his vision for the Third Reich is in full force. Berlin buzzes with the clamor of Nazi rallies. Economically, Germany roars back, with the scars of the Great Depression fading as factories hum and unemployment dips, all driven by heavy militarization. Day and night, factories churn out weapons for what is becoming an open secret: war. Ravensburg, a town nestled in the rolling hills of southern Germany, remains a quiet haven amid the escalating tensions of the Third Reich. In this tranquil setting, Klaus Martin Schwab is born. His father, Eugen Wilhelm Schwab, moves from Switzerland to Germany in search of better career opportunities. He becomes the director of Escher Wyss AG, an industrial powerhouse collaborating with the Nazi regime.
During the late 1930s and throughout World War II, Escher Wyss AG, a Swiss engineering firm, played a pivotal role in supporting Germany's military endeavors.
The company specialized in producing flamethrowers, a weapon extensively utilized by the German military during the war. Operating from its factories in Ravensburg, Germany, Escher Wyss became integral to the Nazi war machine.
The company's machinery and innovations play a vital role in Germany's ambitions, powering an industrial engine with a darker purpose. As a young man, Klaus Schwab listens closely to his father's words. Eugen Schwab is an influential figure in Germany's industrial landscape. He makes his expectations clear. Klaus must pursue engineering. Feeling the weight of his father's expectations, Klaus takes the path laid before him. He dedicates himself to mechanical engineering. When World War II begins to deteriorate, his parents send him back to Switzerland for further schooling. There, Klaus finds solace in Switzerland's peace and education system, but beneath the surface, a different passion brewed. Under his father's pressure, Klaus excels in his studies, earning a degree and later a PhD from the prestigious Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich. But deep down, he knows his true calling lies in economics and politics.
He realized that if he could understand mechanical systems, he could also be able to comprehend the broader social, political, and economic systems.
Fueled by this vision, Klaus sets his sights on the world's finest institution, Harvard, convinced it is the place where he could not only understand the world's systems, but also learn how to shape and influence them. And there, Klaus finds a mentor who has mastered the art of global influence.
By the time Klaus Schwab arrived at Harvard in the mid-1960s, Henry Kissinger was already a formidable figure in academia and beyond.
Born in 1923 in Fürth, Germany, Kissinger fled to the United States with his family in 1938 to escape Nazi persecution. He grew up in New York, where he embraced the American dream with an intense drive, quickly rising as a brilliant student. After serving in the U.S. Army during World War II, Kissinger attended Harvard, where he earned a bachelor's, master's, and eventually a PhD in political science. His dissertation, A World Restored, analyzed the balance of power in 19th century Europe, laying the foundation for his lifelong obsession with realpolitik. By the early 1960s, Kissinger was a respected Harvard professor known for his sharp intellect and decisive approach to international relations.
His lectures were legendary, drawing students eager to grasp his pragmatic insights on power and geopolitics. He had already begun to establish himself as a consultant to various government officials, honing his theories on diplomacy and strategy.
To understand Klaus Schwab and the eventual World Economic Forum, it all stems from the core ideas of Henry Kissinger.
During his time as a professor at Harvard, Henry Kissinger's main ideas revolve around realpolitik, a practical and strategic approach to international relations that emphasizes power dynamics over ideology or moral considerations. He believes that global stability can only be achieved through a balance of power among nations, not by pursuing idealistic or moral goals.
Kissinger focused on the need for leaders to understand the motives, intentions, and potential moves of other states operating in a world where each nation acts to maximize its power and security.
His approach reflects the basics of game theory, understanding what others might do, adjusting strategies when situation changes, and seeking equilibrium where stability can be maintained.
With his prestigious educational background, Klaus Schwab lands a lucrative career as the director of Sulzer Escher Weiss AG in Zurich, serving on the managing board. It is a Swiss engineering firm where his father was a senior member. His role is pivotal and challenging, as he is tasked with restructuring the company during a critical period in the late 1960s.
So all these changes in the world, internally and externally, are leading organizations toward the need to restructure every so often. So we have to be constantly thinking about how can we restructure our business to give us the organizational capabilities and the scale we need to be able to grow.
His work was very much like management consulting, helping companies improving operations, raising revenue and cutting costs. But along the way, he realized the importance of putting his philosophy into action, the so-called stakeholder approach.
As he streamlines operations and modernizes management practices, Schwab realizes that the stakeholder approach to capitalism may be the way of the future. This idea of stakeholder capitalism was further enriched by his time at Harvard, and now it becomes Schwab's guiding principle. Inspired and emboldened by his experiences, Schwab envisions something radical, a platform where corporate leaders can collaborate to reshape capitalism itself. He calls it the European Management Forum, a bold new gathering aimed at redefining business priorities on a global scale. But there is a daunting problem. He has no guarantee anyone will come. In the early 1970s, Davos is a serene and relatively isolated mountain town nestled in the Swiss Alps, primarily known as a health resort and a hub for winter sports. To Schwab's surprise, over 400 participants show up for the gathering, mainly from European countries and US universities.
These days, business clubs like this are everywhere, but in the early 1970s, they were almost unheard of. The idea of getting business leaders, government officials, and academics together to share ideas, solve big problems, and find common ground was something entirely new.
Before Davos, most business conferences were industry-specific and mainly focused on technical topics or specific sectors. The idea of creating a broader dialogue that included public and private sectors, academia, and other stakeholders was unconventional.
It was surprising that Klaus Schwab, a relatively young and lesser-known figure at the time, managed to gather over 400 participants for the first Davos meeting in 1971. Schwab's sudden rise had all the makings of a mystery. A man with no notable title, a forum with no track record, and yet here they all were.
The inaugural meeting of Klaus Schwab's European Management Forum in 1971 is, against all odds, a resounding success. This exclusive club, the first of its kind, allows members to network, collaborate on solutions, and strike deals. But as the first gathering comes to a close, a storm is brewing, one that none of them can predict.
And the American economy is by far the strongest in the world. Accordingly, I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators.
In the summer of 1971, President Nixon abruptly takes the U.S. off the gold standard, plunging the world economy into chaos. As a result, attendance at the second year of the forum drops by half. If the trend continues, Klaus Schwab's brilliant idea of transforming global capitalism will die before it takes off. He knows. To draw more prominent figures to his club, he needs someone with a strong reputation. Over the coming years, he begins leveraging prominent international figures to attract more attendance. For example, by 1974, Dom Helder Camara, a Brazilian archbishop known for championing the poor, attends the forum. Within just a few years, the forum grows both in size and popularity, with members contributing significant funds to the organization. Klaus Schwab's forum now becomes an exclusive club of a growing number of world elites. But no one can anticipate what happens next, just a year later. The 1970s are a period of significant political unrest in West Germany, marked by social movements, student protests, and growing disillusionment with capitalism, consumer culture, and the West German government, criticized by some for still being tainted by Nazi-era figures. Radical left-wing groups like the Red Army faction emerge from this volatile environment. The RAF seeks to overthrow what it sees as an oppressive state and capitalist system. Influenced by Marxism, Leninism, and anti-imperialist ideals, the group embraces violence as a means to spark revolution.
Thousands of policemen combed streets, parks, and parking lots for an hour today, seeking cars loaded with explosives that anarchists had threatened to set off between 1 and 2 p.m.
Hans Martin Schleyer is a prominent West German businessman and a key figure in the post-war economic recovery. He was a former SS officer during the Nazi era, which made him a symbol of the continuity of Nazi elites in post-war West Germany. He is an advocate for pro-business policies, labor reforms, and a defender of West Germany's capitalist system. Exactly the kind of establishment figure the RAF despises. It is September 5th, 1977, a day that will change West Germany forever. Hans Martin Schleyer is driving home in Cologne when a Red Army faction commando team strikes. Blocking his car with a pram, gunmen unleash a hail of bullets, killing Schleyer's driver, bodyguard, and 2 police officers. Schleyer is forced into a getaway car and whisked away to an undisclosed location. The RAF demanded the release of 11 imprisoned members, including Andreas Baader and Gudrun Ensslin. It is the beginning of what becomes known as the German Autumn, a season of terror marked by violence, including the hijacking of Lufthansa Flight 181. For over a month, Schleyer remains captive. Then, on October 18th, RAF leaders in Stammheim prison are found dead, allegedly by suicide. The following day, the RAF delivers its own grim message. Schleyer's body is discovered in the trunk of a car in Mulhouse, France, a tragic end to a harrowing saga. In their final communiqué, the RAF declares that Schleier's execution is retaliation for the government's refusal to negotiate and the deaths of their comrades in prison.
Hans Martin Schleyer, the West German industrialist, was killed 36 hours before his body was found yesterday in the trunk of a car in the Alsatian city of Mulhouse, according to an official announcement made there tonight.
Schleier's death shocks the nation, prompting a massive crackdown on terrorism. For Klaus Schwab, the death of Schleier is a devastating blow to his cause. As a member of the Davos Club, Schleier's assassination casts a shadow over the group. With the club's ranks filled with prominent figures like Schleier, it becomes an easy focus for terrorist groups. To make sure the meeting in 1978 goes smoothly, Klaus Schwab invests a considerable amount of money in heightened security measures, transforming what was once a casual gathering into a heavily guarded event in a fortress-like setting.
This transformation would likely have fueled the perception of Davos as an exclusive and elitist enclave, a haven for the wealthy and the powerful seeking protection behind barriers and armed guards.
But it doesn't stop the forum's growing popularity. By the end of the 1970s, the Davos Forum evolves from a European management meeting into a global platform for dialogue on business and politics. But for Klaus Schwab, it is not nearly enough. He knows the forum cannot remain merely a stage for lofty conversations. It must become a force of real influence, one capable of shaping global agendas and altering the course of history. And somewhere on the global stage, tensions are reaching a breaking point. A geopolitical crisis is about to erupt, and it could be his moment to seize.
Prime Minister Bülent Ulusu accused Greece today of trying to establish fate's accomplice in the Aegean region and warned that Turkey will not hesitate to equally retaliate.
In the early 1980s, the blue waters of the Aegean Sea become the stage for a tense standoff between two ancient rivals, Greece and Turkey. Scattered with islands and rich in history, this stretch of sea has always been contested, but now it lies at the heart of a dispute with far greater stakes.
The animosity between Greece and Turkey stretches back centuries, particularly due to the Ottoman Empire's rule over Greece from the 15th century until Greece's independence in 1829, and the Greco-Turkish War from 1919 to 1922.
Greece seeks to extend its territorial waters from 6 nautical miles to 12, a move that would grant Athens greater control over the Aegean. To Turkey, this is not just a political maneuver. It is a direct threat to their access to vital shipping lanes and resources. They issue a stern warning. Should Greece proceed, it will be considered a cause for war. By 1982, tensions reach a boiling point. Both nations prepare for a potential flashpoint, with military maneuvers escalating and aggressive rhetoric filling the air. NATO, concerned about the growing danger between two of its key members, steps in to prevent the region from spiraling into open conflict. But the simmering tension never truly disappears. In March 1987, the conflict comes dangerously close to war. Turkey announces its intention to send the seismic survey vessel into the disputed waters of the Aegean to search for oil. Greece views this as a direct violation of their rights and vows to block Turkey's actions by all means necessary. As Klaus Schwab watches the rising tensions between Turkey and Greece, he senses more than just another geopolitical crisis. The growing popularity of his Davos Club has made it a coveted platform for discussion, but Schwab's ambitions stretch far beyond mere conversation. He craves impact, the kind that reshapes world events and redefines the forum's role in global affairs. This conflict is more than a regional standoff. It is Schwab's opportunity. If he can bring both sides to the negotiating table and broker peace, the Davos Club will no longer be just a meeting place for the powerful. It will become a force for real change. Schwab sees it clearly. A breakthrough in Davos could elevate his organization to unprecedented heights and solidify his status as a true global influencer. As the summit approaches, Klaus Schwab moves quietly but decisively behind the scenes. He reaches out to key players, trusted diplomats, seasoned advisors, and influential business leaders with close ties to both Athens and Ankara.
Schwab knew that direct talks could be very volatile. Instead, he initiated back-channel communications, probing for potential compromises from both parties, where public pressure couldn't interfere.
But Schwab's vision extends beyond closed doors. He meticulously crafts the Davos agenda to resonate with both sides. The real work begins in private meetings, where Greek and Turkish officials speak freely, away from the glare of cameras. Schwab remains ever present. His role is to ensure both sides feel respected, building trust where there had been none. By the end of the summit, the efforts bear fruit. Turkey and Greece reach a tentative agreement. It includes commitments to maintain current territorial waters, establish joint resource exploration zones in disputed areas, and reduce military patrols in the Aegean.
After meeting in this alpine ski resort, the prime ministers of Greece and Turkey announced what they said was an important agreement today to help bring peace and cooperation to their traditionally hostile countries.
By orchestrating this landmark agreement, Schwab solidified Davos as the center of international influence and his own reputation as a shrewd, behind-the-scenes power broker. It was the very moment he had been waiting for, the opportunity to make Davos synonymous not just with dialogue, but with action and impact.
In the early 1980s, Schwab officially renames the organization the World Economic Forum, signaling its global ambitions. But that won't help with a personal challenge coming from a place he never expected. Despite his deep ties to Switzerland through his education, professional endeavors, and long-term residence, Klaus Schwab remains a German citizen. As his organization gains influence, Schwab considers adding Swiss citizenship, believing it would be an easy step given his stature. But in order to become a Swiss citizen, he has to be probed in a process known as naturalization scrutiny. Surprisingly, Klaus Schwab declines to be investigated.
Klaus Schwab faced a requirement to do a background check, an in-depth investigation into his personal background, character, and ties to the country. Surprisingly, or maybe not, he declined such a process. Why would a man so deeply connected to Switzerland, both professionally and socially, refuse such a scrutiny? Was there something that he wished to keep hidden about his past?
For Schwab, Swiss citizenship no longer matters. Something far greater is on the horizon. The world is on the brink of a fundamental shift, one that promises to redefine everything. As the dawn of a new world order approaches, Schwab knows one thing for certain. This time, he and his Davos Club will be at the center of it all. In the past decade, one of the key topics emphasized by the World Economic Forum has been the rise of artificial intelligence. In the foreseeable future, AI has the potential to unlock unprecedented levels of human productivity.
AI has been a tool that has allowed me to create visuals and speed up editing, enabling me to run a rather complicated YouTube business with just 2 people.
This video's sponsor, InVideo AI, is the revolutionary tool that turns your concepts into full-length videos in minutes. Whether you're a seasoned creator or just starting, InVideo AI puts you in the director's seat, where your vision takes center stage. Here's how it works. Simply type your idea into the intuitive prompt box. In moments, you'll have a complete video ready to go. Imagine typing, "Create a 1-minute ad for strawberry-flavored Coca-Cola with cinematic shots." And seconds later, you're previewing your first cut.
Imagine the sweetness of summer, combined with the refreshing taste you love. Introducing Coca-Cola.
You can also edit anything you like add my voice. From storytelling to TikTok ads, InVideo AI acts as your creative partner. It's the perfect tool for anyone looking to save time and money while producing high-quality videos.
Try it for free today and save time, effort, and hundreds of dollars in production costs.
Throughout the 1980s, the Soviet Union faces deep political, economic, and social crises. Mikhail Gorbachev, who becomes General Secretary of the Communist Party in 1985, initiates reforms to modernize the Soviet system. By 1991, various Soviet republics push for independence, while economic conditions continue to deteriorate. In a desperate bid to save the Union, Gorbachev proposes a new treaty granting them more autonomy. But on August 18th, as he vacations in Crimea, a coup takes place, and the plotters place him under house arrest to block the treaty's signing just 2 days later.
Repeating once again our top story, Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev has been removed from power, and there are tanks now in the streets of Moscow. Vice President Gennady Yanayev says he has taken over as acting president as the head of state of a special state committee. You're watching live pictures from Moscow this morning.
The coup leaders send tanks and troops into Moscow, expecting minimal resistance. But the situation quickly turns against them. Boris Yeltsin, president of the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic, emerges as a central figure of resistance. Yeltsin famously climbs atop a tank outside the Russian White House, rallying supporters and calling for civil disobedience against the coup. Thousands of citizens, inspired by Yeltsin's defiance, gather to protect the parliament building and oppose the military forces. The coup leaders face internal divisions, waning support, and military defections to Yeltsin. Troops withdraw from Moscow, and Gorbachev is freed from house arrest. By December 1991, the Soviet Union is formally dissolved. Gorbachev resigns as the last leader of the USSR on December 25, 1991.
He said his action was inevitable. After 6.5 years in power, Mikhail Gorbachev confirmed his resignation on television tonight.
Я покидаю свой пост с тревогой, но и с надеждой, с верой в вас, вашу мудрость и силу духа. Мы наследники великой цивилизации, и сейчас от всех и каждого зависит, чтобы она возродилась к новой, современной и достойной жизни.
The failed coup catapults Boris Yeltsin to the forefront of Russian politics, positioning him as the leader of a newly independent Russia. But despite Yeltsin's successful rise to power, his rule is far from secure. By 1996, a formidable challenger emerges, one with the potential to overtake him and even bring back communist rule.
So Russia was facing severe economic crisis, triggered by Yeltsin's rapid transformation into market economy. The reform had led to hyperinflation, skyrocketing unemployment, and widespread poverty.
Gennady Zyuganov, head of the resurgent Communist Party, presents himself as the voice of those left behind by Yeltsin's reforms. He promises a return to stability, economic protectionism, and the restoration of Russia's lost prestige. If he succeeds, it could mean a dramatic return to communism, threatening to reset the New World Order once again. For Klaus Schwab, the crisis is yet another opportunity to leverage his platform to exert influence. Davos in 1996 becomes more than just a forum for discussing global economics. It becomes the setting for a pivotal political alliance that will be known as the Davos Pact. Within the halls of Davos, Russian oligarchs, newly minted billionaires who have profited from the chaotic privatizations of the 1990s, are keenly aware of what is at stake. Men like Boris Berezovsky, Vladimir Gusinsky, and Mikhail Khodorkovsky understand that a Zhuganov victory could mean the end of their fortunes, as the communists pledge to renationalize major industries and seize the assets privatized under Yeltsin's watch. The oligarchs, alongside pro-Yeltsin reformists, gather in private meetings away from the formal sessions of the WEF. Schwab, ever the facilitator, provides the environment for these discreet discussions. Driven by self-preservation, they pool resources to launch a media blitz, using major networks to back Yeltsin and portray Zhuganov as a symbol of Soviet repression. The Davos Pact propels Yeltsin's campaign from near defeat to victory, securing 54.4% of the vote.
After months away from office due to illness, Boris Yeltsin returned to the Kremlin in true presidential style. His return effectively marks the start of his second term in office.
The election came at a significant cost. Yeltsin had made deals with the oligarchs that will lead to increased corruption and further consolidation of wealth among the few.
Klaus Schwab's vision is finally taking shape. His Davos Club, once a casual retreat for elites, evolves into a platform for real change on the world stage. By the mid-1990s, the WEF grows exponentially, attracting over 1,000 members, each representing major corporations and government agencies from around the world. As the founder and head of this influential club, Schwab ensures that he is well compensated, earning millions of dollars annually. But Schwab understands that salary alone won't make him truly wealthy. The real money, he believes, lies in leveraging the WEF's global network and prestige for private gain. He begins exploring ways to monetize the nonprofit organization. In the mid-1990s, he allows his nephew, Hans Schwab, to use WEF funds to launch private ventures. One such venture, Global Events Management, is set up to organize WEF events, generating millions annually.
Klaus Schwab's demands for a 5% stake in the business demonstrated his pursuit for personal gain within the framework of his nonprofit activities.
But Schwab doesn't stop there. He starts using WEF funds to invest in a wide array of ventures, seeking to capitalize on the internet bubble into ventures like a video conferencing startup, Advanced Video Communications. A $5 million investment grows to $20 million, and Schwab transfers the shares to the Schwab Foundation for Social Entrepreneurship, an entity he controls. With that, Klaus Schwab finally becomes as wealthy as the elites who join his club. And soon, a new member joins his organization, the richest man in the world at the time, Bill Gates. The mid to late 1990s is a period of rapid globalization, technological transformation, and significant geopolitical shifts. To address the impact of the rise of the internet, Klaus Schwab welcomes a new member to his club, Bill Gates. By the time Gates arrives at the 1997 Davos meeting, he has already reshaped the world of personal computing. As the driving force behind Microsoft, Gates has turned the company into a global powerhouse, with Windows and Office dominating nearly every desktop on the planet. He is now the world's richest man, a symbol of the tech boom, and a leading figure of Silicon Valley's expanding influence. The emergence of Bill Gates onto the world stage will have unexpected consequences down the road. But for now, a new crisis is brewing 4,500 miles away from Davos, South Asia. The once booming Thai economy, built on speculative investments and foreign debt, suddenly crumbles when the government devalues the baht, abandoning its peg to the US dollar. Panic ensues as the baht plummets, triggering a wave of capital flight that ripples across South Asia.
Asia's economic crisis deepened yesterday as one of the world's largest credit rating agencies downgraded the sovereign debt of South Korea, Indonesia, and Thailand to junk status, seriously impairing the country's ability to raise the money needed to work through the region's wrenching downturn.
In South Korea, heavy corporate debt forces the country to seek a controversial IMF bailout, resulting in austerity measures and widespread unrest.
The crisis revealed just how vulnerable growing economies are to the chaos of the global markets, where money can flood in one day and disappear the next.
For Klaus Schwab, every crisis is an opportunity to build influence. He knows one thing: the time for Davos to intervene has come again. Amid significant global economic challenges, including the Asian financial crisis, the World Economic Forum convenes its annual meeting in January 1998.
Hillary Rodham Clinton was the star speaker tonight at the World Economic Forum, the annual gathering here in this luxury alpine ski resort for chief executives and political leaders from around the world.
During the Davos meeting, discussions focus on the need for a more inclusive and representative forum to address these emerging economic issues.
At this point, Davos became sort of like the board meeting for the world. Whenever there was an issue, people would be like, let's talk about it at Davos.
The idea of creating a global institution that includes both developed and emerging economies is born in Davos, leading to the establishment of the G20.
It comprises 19 countries and the European Union, representing 80% of the global GDP, 75% of the international trade, and 60% the world's population.
The first G20 meeting is held in Berlin, Germany, in December 1999. Participation is restricted to finance ministers, and its scope is initially limited to global finance. By the early 2000s, WEF membership surges, with fees climbing and generating substantial revenue. Klaus Schwab's vision of a platform for shaping global agendas becomes a reality as Davos evolves into a critical venue for addressing complex issues like climate change, trade, and digital transformation. During the 2000 meeting, the WEF launches a major initiative, the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization.
This plan wanted to make it easier for kids in poor countries to get vaccines. It brought together governments, international groups, rich people who give money to good causes, and companies that make vaccines. They all worked together to make sure more kids could get the shots they needed to stay healthy.
The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation makes an initial commitment of $750 million to establish the Vaccine Fund, catalyzing other donors to support vaccine delivery and creating GAVI. The GAVI will go on to have immunized over 1.1 billion children in 78 countries, averting more than 18.8 million future deaths.
But there was a glaring issue. Decisions about public health were being made by a handful of powerful elites.
But what Klaus Schwab and his elite allies don't foresee is the backlash their so-called good intentions will begin to face, a backlash unlike any they have encountered before. And the first wave of dissent will arise in an unlikely place.
It It was supposed to be a stimulating group chat about the global economy, held here a few days before the opening of the Olympics. But in an eruption reminiscent of the violent protests at the World Trade Organization summit meeting in Seattle last November, thousands of protesters have tried to sabotage the meeting here of the World Economic Forum, clashing with riot police and blocking the conference site.
In September 2000, Melbourne becomes the epicenter of a significant anti-globalization movement, as the World Economic Forum hosts its Asia-Pacific Economic Summit at the Crown Casino. The event attracts approximately 10,000 protesters, marking one of Australia's largest demonstrations against corporate globalization.
The protests in Melbourne in September 2000 were part of a broader anti-globalization movement that had been gaining momentum since the late 1990s.
Jobs were increasingly outsourced to low-wage countries, leading to job losses and wage stagnation in industrialized nations, while labor rights and local industries suffered in developing nations.
Ultimately, the protests failed to slow the relentless pace of globalization or dent the Davos Club's growing power, membership, and wealth. Klaus Schwab's vision seems unstoppable, unshaken by outside opposition. But inside, a ticking clock counts down to a crisis that will challenge the foundation and demand Schwab's reckoning. After 3 decades of building his powerful Davos Club, Klaus Schwab reaches a turning point as the new millennium approaches. It is time to appoint a successor, someone who can carry forward his legacy of influence and global dialogue. He selects José María Figueres, a charismatic former president of Costa Rica, who steps into the role of managing director and later becomes CEO of the World Economic Forum from 2000 to 2004.
At first, Figueres seemed like the ideal candidate, well-connected, experienced, and respected.
But in October 2004, the facade crumbles. It emerges that Figueres has accepted over $900,000 in undisclosed consultancy fees from Alcatel, a French telecommunications giant, while holding his WEF position.
Figueres, who resides in Switzerland, has failed to appear before the Assembly's Public Expenditures Commission on 4 occasions, most recently last week, since legislators first asked him to testify in November. The former head of state maintains the consulting fees he received in 2001, a total of $906,000, are legitimate and accused legislators this week of using the situation for political gain.
But that's just what made it into the public eye. Behind the closed doors of Davos, who knows how many similar incidents have gone unreported, concealed by the cloak of exclusivity and power.
But the Figueres scandal is just a tremor compared to the earthquake that is about to hit the global economy.
The signs were everywhere, but now it's official, we are in a recession. The research group that makes that determination made it today and said the recession actually started a year ago. But the question now, when will it end? Wall Street is clearly worried. The Dow plunged nearly 680 points today, or 7.7%.
By the mid-2000s, the financial world teeters on the edge, driven by risky loans, over-leveraged banks, and a false sense of security. By early 2009, the financial crisis is barely contained. As usual, world leaders flock to their exclusive club to talk. The air in Davos is colder than usual in January 2009. Klaus Schwab, as ever, tries to encourage a sense of unity and collaboration, but even he cannot mask the desperation that has taken hold.
This guy always wants to present his own solutions, so he proposed an initiative called the Great Redesign.
In the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis, Klaus Schwab introduces the Great Redesign initiative.
His go-to solution was to urge the world's governments and institutions to strengthen ties and further advance the vision of a global government.
Little does Schwab know, the world is about to veer in a direction he never anticipated. The aftermath of the financial crisis will not unify global governance as he hopes. Instead, it will fragment it. Schwab and his elite circle are about to face a world that is more divided, more nationalistic, and far less global than they ever imagined. By the 2010s, a wave of populist leaders begins shaking the global order. In the US, Donald Trump rallies against trade deals like NAFTA, claiming they hurt American workers. While in Britain, the Brexit vote sends shockwaves through Europe, a cry for sovereignty and control over borders. But it isn't just political figures driving the shift. Social media amplifies dissent, empowering movements and protests across the globe to challenge the promises of globalization. But all of this pales in comparison to what is about to come, a global pandemic that will test every assumption, every system, and every nation. As the virus spreads unchecked across borders, the world faces a crisis like no other, one that not only challenges the foundations of globalization, but exposes its deepest vulnerabilities. But for Klaus Schwab, this global pandemic could be the perfect opportunity for the Davos Club to regain its influence. In June 2020, Schwab introduces the concept of the Great Reset, advocating for a comprehensive restructuring of global economic and social systems to create a more equitable and sustainable future.
I see the need for action. I see the need for a great reset. We can, and the World Economic Forum is very open and as an open platform to integrate everybody who is willing to address those issues in a spirit, which means to exercise here true global citizenship.
At the same time, Bill Gates, through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, plays a pivotal role in the global response to COVID-19. The foundation commits over $2 billion to support vaccine development, diagnostics, and therapeutics. Gates also calls for the establishment of a global epidemic response and mobilization team, a specialized group dedicated to detecting and responding to pandemic threats. The 2020 Davos meeting buzzes with anticipation, but this time, the spotlight isn't on Klaus Schwab. It is on Larry Fink, the man who has risen to the pinnacle of global finance. As the world's most powerful CEOs gather in the snowy Swiss town, Fink makes an announcement that sends ripples across markets everywhere.
Yeah, we had record inflows, and we have
particularly into ESG things.
Record inflows in ESG.
Yeah.
And so, a part of the announcement, we announced, every one of our products is going to have some form of a sustainable counterpart, and so we could bring this forward and have more investors a part of this dialogue.
ESG, environmental, social, and governance, becomes the new watchword, a framework to evaluate the sustainability and ethical impact of investments. ESG standards are enforced on companies primarily through investor pressure, regulatory mandates, and evolving market expectations.
You have to force behaviors, and at BlackRock we are forcing behaviors.
We see criticisms of ESG and the Great Reset, but the real issue lies with the concentration of decision-making power. Who gave these people, members of an exclusive club, the right to make decisions that affect the lives of the rest of the world?
Certainly in the last year, the data are pretty clear that ESG has really underperformed other sectors like the U.S. energy sector. But, the problem is that when you have over 50% market share representing entities get together, decide to coordinate on an action like cutting production, and then prices spike at the pump as a result, we have a word for that in this country. It's called an antitrust violation.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club.
With Larry Fink in the club, Klaus Schwab regains a sense of power, hopeful that his vision for a world government is once again within reach. But he has no way of knowing the unexpected turn his own fate is about to take.
A former employee sued the nonprofit, accusing it of denying professional opportunities because of her race and gender. An article in the Wall Street Journal last month, citing internal complaints and interviews with current and former employees, said workers had accused the organization of sexual harassment and racism.
In June 2024, the World Economic Forum and its founder, Klaus Schwab, faced serious allegations of sexual harassment and discrimination. A report by the Wall Street Journal details claims from over 80 current and former employees, accusing WEF leadership of fostering a hostile work environment for women and black employees. Specific allegations against Schwab include making unwanted advances and inappropriate comments toward female staff members.
In May 2024, Klaus Schwab announced that he would step down from his role as executive chairman of the World Economic Forum by January 2025, transitioning to become the chairman of the board of trustees.
But even with his resignation, his organization hasn't changed much. It's just as influential as ever.
In 2024, the WEF brings together over 2,500 global leaders, CEOs, heads of state, and policymakers from more than 100 countries. Discussions at Davos set the tone for global investments, with ESG-linked funds still controlling over $30 trillion in assets worldwide.
Major corporations from BlackRock to Microsoft continue to align their strategies with the WEF's agenda, making it more than just a meeting of the minds. It's a market mover.
But opposition is growing. Figures like Elon Musk and other influential leaders criticize the Davos agenda, calling it a threat to individual sovereignty and labeling it an elite overreach. Meanwhile, anti-globalization sentiment surges worldwide, with populist movements demanding national control over borders, resources, and economies. Across the globe, protests against globalization intensify, challenging the WEF's vision of a unified global system. As power dynamics shift, the idea of a unified world government becomes more elusive than ever, caught between elite-driven agendas and fierce resistance from both nationalist leaders and grassroots movements.
The WEF remains influential, but it is now battling more than just global challenges. It's facing a fractured world, unwilling to bend to its vision.